Hello everyone. Today we have with us Narayana, and we're very honored to do this interview with her. First of all, thank you very much for joining us today. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I am really happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Well, we are honored truly to have you here. As you all might know, Narayana mixes her astrological practice with a lot of spirituality, and her journey is truly quite deep. Um, we know about her that she is also an artist, and her
Mhm.
art is very, very linked to her spiritual practices. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your art?
Yes, I never went to art school or anything like that. Um, I didn't know how to do anything, and I still don't. Um, when I came to astrology, I kept getting the message that that I'm an artist. And that seemed quite strange to me because I've always liked art. I've always been an admirer of art, but I never really went to art school. And so I started just playing around. I rented an art studio and I created my own practice and my own processes. I took a couple of classes, but I am not kind of like the typical person. I kind of have to have my own way of doing things. And art was also one of those areas in which like I have to do things differently. And so basically my inspiration became astrology. It became what the planets are doing at any given time, or really special conjunctions. I paint special conjunctions, like, for example, the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. I painted that, or I paint birth charts as well. So people send me their birth charts, and I make a painting it's inspired on their birth chart. And I feel like it's a really good way to feel a chart for someone that doesn't know astrology. Because art is all about the feeling that it evokes, right? And so, yes, basically everything I paint is related to astrology.
That's amazing and quite unique, if I might say so. So you talked about, bringing the chart to life, like representing it physically. When you're working with clients, do you incorporate art into their journey? Do you try to guide them through using art as a means to make them understand themselves better?
Um, Not necessarily. It's a little bit separated. What I have been experimenting with instead is the Akashic Records, which is another spiritual tool available to us, but that's a little bit more esoteric. So I incorporate meditation for that, to connect to the client and enter their Akashic Records library. But when it comes to the art, it is kind of like a solo project for me. I connect to the chart. I meditate a little bit on that chart, and then I choose the colors, which is the longest process. Actually, I think choosing the colors takes me longer than actually making the painting. Um, but so yes, that's a little bit, the art is a little bit kind of like me in my studio, connecting with that person that I don't know, but I imagine.
So it's kind of like your means of connecting with strangers in a way, but through like a kind of a spiritual way.
Exactly, and in a way that's how it is to be an astrologer, because like when I prepare for readings, because I prepare for like an hour ahead of time, you don't know that person. You guess and you imagine. Um, but at the same time, you get to know them at a very deep level. You don't know them, and then you're talking about very deep things. And so when the person arrives to the reading, it's kind of fun to actually see them in person, and then they're telling you some of their most hidden parts of themselves. So it's, to me, it is a fascinating experience to do that, you know, to imagine how the life of a person can be, and then an hour later they're in front of you talking to you about it.
That is truly quite curious. So
Mhm.
we know about your book, which was also translated into Italian, if I'm not wrong. Um,
Actually, it was translated into Spanish. So
oh,
this is
amazing.
this is yeah, this is the English version, and then it was translated into Spanish.
Oh, amazing. I might
Mhm.
give that a read myself. I hope so. But would you like to tell us about how you came to write the book? What was your like inspiration? Was there a particular process?
Well, to be honest, it was a process that I worked with the publishing company. Originally, this book was going to be about the luminaries, about the sun and the moon. Um, but after coming up with many ideas, we decided to do it just on the moon, because like the reason why is that astrology has become very popular in the recent years, you know, throughout history. Even though it's an ancient art, to me, that's how I see it. Its popularity has always been like kind of like up and down, right? And right now we're at an up. Mhm. So when over 10 years ago, when I started doing astrology, um, nobody really, there are less people interested in it, right? And so now the newer generations are more interested in astrology. And so for many of them, it's really groundbreaking to know their moon sign, you know? So that's why we decided to kind of like inspire people with just the moon, because there is so much to talk about the moon. And and the journey with the moon is an ongoing journey, you know. What I really like about my book is that it has a chapter at the end that is about the progressed moon, so on how your moon sign changes over time. And so it is designed to help those new up and coming, either baby astrologers or astrologer enthusiasts, to follow that journey, to follow their moon sign, which changes over time, to kind of understand their emotional focus. So for me, the progressed moon has been very groundbreaking in my journey. And what's really funny is that at that time, my progressed moon was doing a lot of things in my chart. And so that seemed kind of like the right way to go. And it was also what the publisher thought would be a good idea to bring out into the world at that time.
Thank you. Thank you. That was quite interesting. Is there anything you think that, young astrologers, people who are just getting into it, should have to concentrate particularly on? Is there an aspect of astrology you might think is treated poorly nowadays because it's so popularized that it's maybe treated superficially?
To be honest, what I see happening in with young astrologers is that they get locked into certain types or certain techniques,
Mm-hmm.
and they just get locked into them, you know. An example is the whole sign houses, for example. I don't resonate with that, right? And I also think that when you get locked into a certain type or or certain techniques, you're kind of missing out on these like wide range of other techniques. And you know, this is a very old ancient art, but it has evolved over time. And so to me, it is really important to keep learning and keep trying new things, keep trying new techniques, instead of just getting locked into something. That's at least my opinion. You know, I am constantly taking classes and opening my mind to see that perhaps something that I haven't tried could work. And I'm actually being a little bit more specific in the sense of like between traditional astrology and modern astrology. From an early time in my career, I decided that I wasn't going to get locked into traditional or modern, because they both work, and they both work for different things, so that's why I don't like to call myself either a traditional or a modern astrologer. I use techniques, ancient techniques, but I also use techniques that are really new, right? And so I think that's what I would say. I mean, obviously everyone has a different practice, but for people who are learning, it's like keep learning, keep trying. Don't get locked into either one or the other, because you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunities to get to the place where you want to go, or where your client wants to go.
Mm-hmm. So you could say you view astrology as an evolving, we could say, practice or art, even though it's been around for so many years and centuries even.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there are, there are some things that are kind of mind blowing, right? But when you think about them, they make sense, you know. Um, and recently I came into one of those big changes, in astrology. And when I thought about it, it made sense to me. So I absolutely think that the art is evolving, and one of the ways in which it's evolving is through technology. One of the reasons why it is so easy now to understand, to learn astrology, is because we have technology. We have all these apps. We have now we have AI. We have, before we didn't. It was actually really hard to become an astrologer back in the day, because you had to like read a lot of books, and you still do, right? I always say you have to read a lot of books, but technology is making it easier for us to spend a little bit less time on the mathematics and all the numbers and all of that, so we can spend more time in interpretation, which at the end of the day is most important, I think, because your client is not really going to care about the math and all these little things. Your client is going to care about the result, or the actionable items that you're going to give them, that's going to help them in their daily life. So absolutely, I think astrology is evolving, and the more we open our minds to certain changes that we need to make to the practice, the richer our practices will become.
Of course. Thank you. I was going to ask also, do you feel as if astrology, like in order to truly learn astrology, you have to have an innate inkling towards it? Or do you feel as if we can learn it from the start, even though, like, if we hear it one day, just randomly, we could start getting into it and truly go to a deep understanding of it?
What do you mean?
What I mean to say is that, do you think in order to maybe become an astrologer, you need to be born with a certain attraction to those kinds of things, like the stars or maybe intuition? Or do you think it could be learned as more of a science or a practice?
I think it's a combination. What I think is that, or what I've heard, right? I've started with that, and what I think. I've heard that it's 70% technique and 30% intuition, because when you definitely channel your intuition when you're an astrologer. There's definitely this magic, and you can feel it, in your energy when you're up to something really interesting with the client. You can feel that magic. That's what I'm always after, getting my client to that place of like, whoa, okay, this makes a lot of sense. I think you can do it both ways, but I do think that all astrologers are psychics, in a way. It definitely takes a lot of science, a lot of calculations, and a lot of observation of the chart. but it also takes a connection with the chart, you know? So there are definitely astrologers that are more scientific, a little bit more geared towards like technique and all of that. But I also think that intuition plays a really big role, because if you're not in tune with your client, you're not going to be able to create that magic. And that is brought by intuition.
Of course. Thank you. Is there anything that you in particularly do in order to reach this higher level of intuition? They could also be like mundane practices that you feel empower you and make you feel more connected.
I mean, I think that meditation has been really important for me. I kind of resisted for a while, and then I fell into meditation because I was going through a very difficult time in my life. And I had already been an astrologer for years, but meditation really helps me ground, you know, and this practice of the Akashic records now, that has been giving me a more profound way to see charts, because like it has allowed me to feel the chart in a multi-dimensional way. And so that practice has allowed me to like think about it more in like the evolution of the soul, kind of like past lives and like the soul journey of every person. So I would say that meditation and Akashic records have really deepened my connection, not only to astrology, but the universe. So I highly always recommend astrologers to also, you know, to not get locked into like so much technique and so much numbers and all of that, but to think about more of like in a can be a little bit more of like long-term way for each chart, you know, what were this person's past life experiences, and what are they here to do in order to fulfill their soul's destiny, you know, that they wrote for themselves. And so it might sound a little esoteric, but it's actually very healing as well. So that has given a little bit more depth to my readings.
Okay. So do you feel like in every reading you do, there's this goal of bringing healing to your client, or is it more of a self-discovery journey?
I think it's both. I think it's both, because like there is definitely healing because the client feels seen, you know, that the client feels seen, and that is really special. And that is what, when I got my first reading as a teen, that's how I felt seen, you know, because I always felt so different from everybody. And I thought there was something wrong with me, you know, because why do I like to do everything differently? And so when the astrologer told me, oh, it's because you have this aspect in your chart, it was like, wow. So there's definitely healing. I would say that the healing happens first, and that allows for self-discovery, you know, because like we all have certain hangups or traumas or insecurities. But once we heal that, and I think that astrology can help us do that, then we can open the door, you know, we open our crown chakras or you know, our chakras or crown chakra or whatever is blocked. And that allows for more room to explore ourselves, because we're no longer so worried about our insecurities, you know, we understand that we're unique. And so that allows for more this self-discovery.
About that, you've said that right now you've been focusing on the Akashic records and what that can bring out in a person. But would you like to take us through your journey? How did you start? How has it evolved through the years of you've grown?
Well, you know, I I just because when I started doing astrology, I have always considered myself an intuitive person. But I think that through astrology, when I was just doing astrology, I kind of started working my intuition muscles. I kind of started getting more and more and more intuitive. And so last year I decided that I wanted more. I want more. There's something more that I need to explore. And then I just started getting a lot of messages, from my spirit guides, from my ancestors. And basically they guided me to this Akashic record practice that I did this year. I was a 6-month journey. And it had a lot to do with my own trauma, with my own story, and I have to say that it really opened my heart, because I felt like I was still a little shut down. I still had, like, misconceptions about life, about the universe, about religion. And that really opened my heart. And so once I started doing the Akashic records, also my path started getting clearer. I started realizing why astrology played a key role in my life, because I studied astrology, of course, with teachers and from books, and I continue to do that, but the practice has really been like evolving over time, and so the Akashic records, it was more about like coming back to myself and realizing that I've been an astrologer many times over, because I studied astrology, but I learned it really quickly.
Mhm.
you know I remember my first class, I realized that I've done this before, like I know this language, I'm just remembering. And when I started doing the Akashic records, I realized that that was true, that it wasn't just in my head, and also the Akashic records has helped me realize that there's just so much magic in our existence that we just need to unplug from the matrix and remember um, that this lifetime is not just standing alone, that there's a reason why we're living the experiences we're living, and all of it is in the birth chart too. So they go along really well. That's what I love about astrology. It goes along with tarot, it goes along with Akashic records, it goes along with it's really interesting, because I have clients, right, that they go to an astrologer, they go to a psychic and an energy healer or a tarot reader, and basically they get very similar information from all of them. So there's because there's synchronicity, there are energies, and so that's what I love about astrology. You can literally like use it and harness it in so many different ways that it's infinite. Like for example with art, that's another combination, and so you can use it for anything.
So what you're saying is that astrology is present in every kind of, you know, we can say spiritual practice a little bit, or at least it's linked to it in some way, because the birth chart tells us so much about ourselves and who we are.
Absolutely. And that, I mean, that, and also at a collective level.
Mm-hmm.
If you get readings from for the collective, let's say, a lot of people do that on Instagram. They're basically reading the energy of the sky. They might not say it. They might not say like specifics, like, oh, Pluto is about to go into Aquarius, but everyone, and in many different schools will tell you like humanity is at a turning point, right? Humanity is at a turning point right now. And that's what astrology is, because we're living on this earth, and then we're all under these natural laws of the universe, and these natural laws are depicted by the planets that are around us in our solar system, and by the stars as well. And so everybody agrees, humanity is at a turning point, And in astrology, we say, well, we're anchoring the age of Aquarius. There are many different schools of thought. Some people think we're not, some people think we are. I think we are in the age of Aquarius. I think that we're still going to start anchoring it in 2024. And everyone will tell you that. We're at a turning point. That's why everything's kind of like so intense right now, because we're switching. We're basically doing this. And so yes, basically astrology, the astrological laws are in place, whether you believe in them or not. And they're everywhere.
Yeah, I totally agree. So how do you think this new shift we're about to, go into is going to affect us?
Well, it's going to be pretty monumental. It's going to be, we've already been in it for a while. We say, for example, just to give you something very recent, all astrologers, modern, traditional, everybody predicted a groundbreaking 2020. If you go back into horoscopes, articles, I write a lot, so I create a lot of content for astrology. Everyone was talking about that 2020 was going to be a pivotal year. So we weren't surprised. And actually, there was a French astrologer that I don't remember his name right now, but he predicted a pandemic. That was predicted. He predicted that in 2012.
Wow.
8 years before. So ever since 2020, we have been having really unique, really powerful, really massive conjunctions and connections of planets that are really rare. And for example, the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, right? That happened at the beginning of 2020, I think, that is unplugging us from 200 years of materialism. Humanity has been living in this materialistic kind of like mindset of like producing, making money at the expense of the earth, for example. That's going to end because Jupiter and Saturn, which are the social planets, were only meeting in earth signs for the past 200 years. Now they're going to meet in air signs. So this whole materialism and like using the earth and the environment, that we're going to see a huge shift here. And we're already seeing that, So then we have Pluto, which is the last planet in the solar system, is going to enter Aquarius. And it's going to stay there for 20 years. So we're talking about the crumbling of capitalism, and all these like big corporations and all these like excessive authoritarian governments. I mean, if you look around everywhere in the world, we see massive protests everywhere. So that's just going to be even more accentuated over the next 20 years as Pluto kind of like these, because Pluto destroys, let's be real, destroys the old structures of our world, and they're already crumbling. So there's room for more individuality, social justice, environmental law, because the environmental laws will need to change, because we can't keep on just mining the earth, that's what we've been doing for the past 200 years. We can't do that anymore. We need to figure out a way in which live in a more sustainable way, right? For example, technology also plays a big role here. We're going to see big advancements in space industry, AI, technology in general, but also we're going to be more individualistic. And this also plays up with the like age of Aquarius, we there's not a consensus around when the age of Aquarius started, but I believe it was in 2012 when the Mayan calendar ended. Well, basically we're ending the age of Pisces, which was kind of like an area in which like everyone was kind of working in groups more, right? Kind of like organized religion is an example. Well, now we're gonna work in groups, but not for those purposes. We're gonna work in groups to bring a little bit more in the presence of individuality and making more room for people to show their unique gifts instead of having to belong, right? Instead of having to belong to certain groups, we're going to be able to express ourselves a little bit more in an individualistic way. There's going to be more room for that. That's why, for example, when you go to Facebook, it asks you what type of sex you are, and there are like 25 options. That's going to get more accentuated. And also, instead of like working for big corporations and all this, right, all this big money, right, we're going to be a little bit more small businesses, people kind of unplugging from these big corporations to go out and do their own thing and show their gifts. And that already started happening, you know, with the influencer marketing and all of that. So they're pretty big shifts. And so right now we're in that transition phase in which everything just feels so like shifty, you know, and that's scary. But the truth is that all of that needs to happen. You know, we have also seen that more countries are being formed. You know, there are more countries than there were 50 years ago. So basically, like, it's going to be exciting times, and these are exciting times that no one else alive has lived. You know, no one alive has experienced Pluto in Aquarius because this planet moves really slowly. So we're still kind of guessing, you know, we kind of look back, you know, the last time that Pluto was in Aquarius, there was the French Revolution that spread it out in everywhere, and there was no internet back then.
Yeah.
So think about now, right? It's going to be a similar situation, but we have internet. So it's going to be really exciting, but it's going to be a time in which like the people are going to take back their power to the people. But there are a lot of changes in society that will have to take place for that to happen.
It's really amazing. So there is hope for like the next generation and newer generations to make a positive change. Is that overall what you think might be happening? Positive changes?
Absolutely. But and you see the younger generations are the ones that are out there, you know, because they were born in it, and they thinking, I didn't sign up for this, right? Like we've seen that everywhere in the Middle East, in the United States, in South America. And so also because we've seen a rise of all these really leftist ideologies. Well, that's happening because it just happens, you know. There's always a time in history that happens, but the new generations are the ones that are going to change everything. You know, we have I don't remember his name right now, but we have that Swiss young fella cleaning the ocean, for example. I think he started doing that when he was 15 or 18 or something like that. So I think that's what's going to take. It's not going to be the older people, you know. The older people are kind of just riding the wave, but it's the new generations that are realizing that we need to make changes, and they are the ones who are going to lead.
Really exciting times ahead then. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here. We are truly grateful for your time and for your interesting.
Of course. No, thank you so much for having me.
Yes. Well, thank you. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, and talk to you another time.
Yeah, for sure. Bye.
Bye bye.